Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habib. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who aren't sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine God, Yahweh, Allah, Hashem, Elohim, Brahman, Great Spirit, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Abdul-Karim Pinckney. Abdul-Karim is a musical artist, a former imam, and spiritual thinker and teacher. He has previously been on Beyond Names to share and talk about his albums Project Inspire and Manipulations of the Unreal. He's joining us for this episode to share his latest single, Living in These Lands. To learn more about Abdul-Karim and his work, please visit themanofreal.net. Abdul-Karim, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Alhamdulillah, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise, likewise. So, will you maybe introduce this single, this Living in the Land, in these lands?
Sure. So this single, Living in These Lands, is essentially a sharing of my journey of living in these lands, trying to maintain my orientation and faith uh, with Allah, to Allah. And, you know, it's layered in meaning because I say these lands and you can take it as specifics, America, because you
Mm,
can definitely hear that portion in the third verse of the song. And in broader understanding, just the dunya life, the life of this world. And so trying to maintain faith with various obstacles and tests that we have on along the way in the journey.
great. Well, shall we hear it?
Sure, so I'm gonna put it up now.
You are listening to a cultivate living in these lands, trying to make do. Living in these lands, trying to stay true. Living in these lands seems kinda hard. Living in these lands, just trying to face God. Living in these lands is outlandish. Feet on the canvas planted. Thinking fast and hands quick. Avoid the satanic planning. People confused, won't choose what a woman or man is. I'm not mad at it, but I'm not having it. I'm adamant these savages are worshiping the Baphomet. Symbolism, sacrilege, thoughts of God inaccurate. The profane and detained by religion, they just laugh at it. Most of the time they mock the divine, they're blocking the mind, ignoring the signs, arrogant pride. Eyes wide open, heart veiled like a wedding day bride, set to survive, gears setting and drive. Evil people ego gotta set them aside, so the heart can connect to the medicine vibe. So the heart can connect to the medicine vibe. Living in these lands, trying to make do. Living in these lands, trying to stay true. Living in these lands seems kinda hard. Living in these lands, just trying to face God. You know, some people say, why don't you just leave? Nah, how about I stay and speak my peace anyway? It's scandalous the way they try to handle us and damage us. They manage us, the vandalists violate God's parameters. I used to turn to cannabis to numb me down, dumb me down. Falling from God's calling, trying to muffle the sound. For God, I'm doubling down. Circles no longer running around. Purpose, avoid the circus, steady ducking these clowns. Know your pitch before you even put your foot to the mound. Got them shook and looking around. Things ain't always what they seem to be. Don't lose reality, chasing what you dream to be. Travel like these lands are full of of thievery. Watch where you walk, don't fall off cause of scenery. Living in these lands, trying to make do. Living in these lands, trying to stay true. Living in these lands seems kinda hard. Living in these lands, just trying to face God. They point their fingers at the most impoverished. They don't acknowledge the carnage spread around by those with dollars. It's utter nonsense. I guess it takes a change of Congress, a conscience. It's noxious. Brothers for the profits, unaware, shrinking power, dollars in our pockets. Enemies, immigrants, illegal or not. Enemies, citizens, believe it or not. My people looking on like we never forgot. Because we never forgot, whether we said it or not. We just accept the foolishness like this is our lot. Some people missing the plot, no longer living with heart. Wasteful with abundance, forget people pissing in pots. We used to say it was hot. When police were in the streets with the addition of ice, it increases the heat. Whether you're guilty or innocent, it doesn't make a bit of sense. Be vigilant and penitent while working towards deliverance. Don't get it twisted, hear what I'm saying, y'all. I know you can't save them all. Some rise, some fall. It's not our call, but as long as I'm living, I decide to pray for all. Living in these lands, trying to make do. Living in these lands, trying to stay true. Living in these lands seems kinda hard. Living in these lands, trying to face God. Now, no place is perfect. You could be quiet and allow things to remain the same, or you could speak up and be a catalyst for change.
Alhamdulillah.
Oh my goodness. I'm laughing because I'm like, I'm supposed to say something after that. Like, what? That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely has a lot impacted in it. I mean, it's something that really emanates from me because I walk with a lot of that what I was speaking on a daily basis, and it's there's a cost to it all, and mashallah, it's something I would like to share with others and hear people's reflections because I don't like just talking and teaching one direction. I like to share. And so, when I give these songs there's one part that's definitely for me, and then when it's out there for whatever makes come alive in people, they're free to share and give feedback.
Yeah. Can you say more about living it on a daily basis?
So living it on a daily basis, uh well, I'll go to the first verse where I talk about thoughts of God inaccurate or the profane entertained by religion. They just laugh at it. They're like, that's something I see constantly where people have these depictions of, and what I usually say, God of their own imagination. Because when I was
Mm.
at a previous job, this guy, he made a comment. He said something like, if God's supposed to be running the world, he's doing a terrible job. And I was like, where'd you get that from? Like, what is it? And, there's a way that our thought processes have
Mhm.
been fed to us a lot because what I say, we come in the shadow of enlightenment, the period of enlightenment, reason, Protestant individualism, Protestant Reformation, New Age stuff, and then there's things that many people haven't researched. I mean, secular humanism, deism. There's a lot of names that are out there that we're parroting, and we don't realize that's the ground we're standing on. And I actually have a small talk that's on cultivatemercy.com where I updated a playlist. It's called Testing the Soil. This
Mhm.
testing the soil of the ground that we're standing on to see, because it's a farming metaphor where the first thing you want to do is test the soil to see if it's fertile for what you're trying to grow. You're trying to grow mercy. And so in this instance, most of these ideologies, beliefs have the self as the centerpiece, whether it's
Mm.
reason and the mercy that is universal, that's not fertile soil. So we have to say pulling the weeds. So when we have these things grounded in our intelligence, it would benefit us to look at it and be honest with ourselves and make a change to see if we want to, develop soil that is fertile for mercy to grow and be able to taste it for ourselves and then expand it out to others. And
So
so,
fun.
go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Go,
No,
please.
no, please, because I don't want to keep going. It's just that day to day hearing different comments like that. And I would say over this weekend, remove Facebook off my phone because there's a part of me that when you're going through a scroll and you come across these different things and it's just a lot of emotion, not complete thoughts that people are just sharing. I mean, a lot of the times the question that says what's on your mind, and it's kind of wild for us to want to go through a scroll of what is going on and I mean, it's already scary enough to face what's going on in our own mind,
Right.
but to do that with others and myself, I don't feel the need to correct the person. I feel the need to sort of, if it enters into purge and reorient myself to Allah to get the thought process out of my mind. So I like research something that is being said if I don't already know, or just tell myself, where it comes from if I haven't had an understanding already.
So I think one of the things that you're saying is to be you're saying that part of how you live with this every day is that you're walking with self-awareness around whether something you see in social media or whether a comment at work or something like that, whether this is directing uh, the self to the ego or the self to the divine. And you're sort of holding up that as a measure of to create soil that actually will cultivate mercy, we need to be turned toward the divine as opposed to the ego self. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, no, and first and foremost to my with my own self, like, okay, I heard this statement. What comes alive in me? And it's like, maybe a Quranic verse will come to like kind of repel what is said or to
Hmm.
bring clarity, or, where did the person get that from? And then I'll research things and like then now maybe it's if it is somebody that's face to face, maybe I'll ask them. I don't always feel the need because a lot of people out in my experience don't really know where their beliefs come from. There's a lot of just emotional parroting that goes on. I mean, it feels good to say it, but when you dig deeper, it's only surface level talk.
Right. You said parroting. So they're repeating what they've heard, but they haven't really gone deep with establishing what they believe for themselves, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because that my first question is where did that come from?
Yeah.
And usually it
Yeah.
ends
Yeah.
there.
So, so what you're expressing in this song, "Living in in these lands," is in part in response to just daily interactions. In part, it's in response to social media. Um, and I gotta ask, it's in part in response to the news, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that whole that third verse, because the first verse I wrote almost no over a year, no almost a year was last July, and then the other two verses I wrote about a week and a half ago,
Yes.
and mentioning ice and stuff like that. because there's that, and that also ties to conversations because I have friends from a variety of spectrum of the scope, whether they support the current president, whether they feel against, whether they align politics, or whether they avoid the whole conversation, and just hearing certain comments about it, it was like we've lost our humanity.
Mm,
we we've adopted these identities that is that is devoid of connection to our humanity, where it's like if you identify as a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative, or that's not who you are. That's that's an adjective at best, but
yeah.
people put that as an essence to stand in, and so I try to bridge the gap, not necessarily with people, well, within the dialogue, bridging where if I'm speaking for, I don't really fit in the playing field because I don't attach to none of these things. I just talk from my lived experience and ask questions mostly. I don't really, like I said, where do you get this belief? And I'll ask questions like, well, with the whole ICE thing, people validating certain use of force because of legality. And I was like, but does this action equal loss of life as a consequence? Like, how do you weigh that out?
Mm,
And I'm not talking about legal stuff, because I learned about a lot of that too recently and just from lived experience, and that's part of the song too. I say, my people looking on like we never forgot, because we never forgot, whether we said it or not. We just accept the foolishness like this is our lot. And in that specific one, I'm talking about like black people in the experience of oppression, or how power is overly used in communities, and to now see other communities become aware, as if we haven't been shouting about this from the beginning. It's just an interesting dynamic to live with. And I thank Allah so much because I don't have resentment around it or anger. It's just a
mm,
witnessing. Like that is something that I don't see a lot of, and a lot of fear out there is missing that, yes, there is injustice. Yes, there is hardships and trials, and it was never promised to be heaven here. We weren't promised it was supposed to be hell either. But, but there
yeah.
is a bigger picture. Like, this is not forever, and there is a forever for us. But I don't really hear that ever talked about when these topics come up. And so that's the chorus, just trying to
Mm,
face God
yeah.
continuously.
So, how do you face the God? I mean, excuse me, the God. Well, there's nothing wrong with saying the God. How do you face the God? How do you face Allah? How do you face the divine? How do you face God? Um, like, what tools do you use when you are reading about, somebody getting killed by ICE or, um, I mean, I know that you're in New York, you're not in Minneapolis. So, but I mean, you've mentioned your lived experience multiple times, and then also I'm just trying to make that connection between your lived experience and when you're reading the news of of oppression of someone else. How does that? What tools do you use to stay turned to God?
But the existence, like to me, and that's another thing I'm very grateful for, is that existence is itself a sign of turning towards, because existence doesn't exist on its own.
Mm,
So like that's presence. Like nothing we experience, nothing we see is happening devoid of the divine presence. And that's hard for a lot of people to accept, because we see some crazy things, but a lot we don't. Allah is not contained by our intellect. He's not contained by our feelings and emotions. And
mm,
so when it takes time. I can't even really explain what I do in full because in reality it isn't me that's doing the full act. So it's like I'm being turned towards in a way, but that sounds a little woo woo. So what I'll say is I or I direct myself to the presence of the moment. And I know that Allah is present in every moment. And so it's just whether I breathe because, we all have, and this is a great part because I said it here and I wanted to correct myself. I said everything is spirituality on one of our talks, and I would like to say we rarely experience what we call spirituality. And that's another thing that I've kind of had an issue with that I'm dealing with now and teasing out is the use of the term spirituality. Because in from a Quranic point, there's not one word that kind of denotes what people mean. And when you ask people how to define it, you'll get almost as many answers as the people you ask. And so when we
Yeah.
use words like that, it's almost a disservice to us because we're not able to connect with what, unless you have enough time to dialogue. When you say spiritual, what do you
Hmm.
mean? And then you can
Hmm.
definitely connect because, like, Quranically, taqwa, which is like awareness of Allah, tazkiyah, purification, ihsan, beautification, we have dhikr, remembrance, or there's a better term than remembrance. Invocation. That's
Mm.
one scholar, he used invocation as a translation of dhikr. And taslim, surrender, and that's a big part of spirituality. But what a lot of people, and in my experience, again, what they call spirituality is actually nervous system responses. So whether you feel safe
Hmm.
and you feel or fright or fear, you feel a contraction, you feel an expansion, you feel a tightening, and or you feel joy or these different things are various things you feel in your nervous system, and it may be tied to something, but it also may not be. It may be something just a basic that and we make stories off of the experience. It's not that this experience is telling us what it is, and that's again another talk on that playlist. That experience is just that. It doesn't like you can experience something even if it's subtle sensory perception, and you see a spirit or something you're seeing something you don't actually that experience doesn't tell you what you're seeing. You derive that after the fact. And so sometimes we tell ourselves some very elaborate stories and it actually doesn't nothing other than inflate the self on a subtle, especially in spiritual what we call spirituality. But that's a whole nother can of worms.
It's interesting that you have that take on spirituality, and I can't help but think of the episode that I had with Dr. Rosina Fauzia Al-Rawi, um,
Hmm.
and because I'm that's a question that I'm interested in because there's so many forms of spirituality, and in this podcast, I think that there are some folks who are going to be critical because I'm not like holding the line of like this is the right religion, right?
Hmm.
I'm saying Islam is my religion. Islamic Sufism is my path, but I'm not saying that's your path or her path or his path or their path. I'm saying show up, share your spiritual story, and I don't I don't have um, the agenda, so to speak, to say that anybody's path is better than anybody else's path, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and so I think that that opens me up to criticism, but then it also is sort of is the a reflection of my own experience of like if the sheikh that I came to Islam through, as you know, Sidi Muhammad al-Jamal, if he'd showed up and to when I first met him, I lived in Austin, Texas. So I mean if he had showed up to Austin and said, "Be a Muslim, Todd," I'd have been like, "Peace out. I'm out."
Yeah,
You know? But instead, he just was like, "You want a taste of the love?" Basically.
yeah.
He just held the door open. So I feel like that's kind of what I'm wanting to do with this podcast is hold the door open. I'm not really wanting to get into like, this path versus that path, um,
Hmm.
or like what theology of what's right and wrong and all of that. But it is very much a topic of my interest and so when I was talking to Fauzia, I said, can you give some thoughts on religion versus spirituality? And
Hmm.
um, and one of the things that she said is that religion without spirituality can be an empty shell. And spirituality without religion, she likened it to like a boat that didn't have a sail, like it's
Yeah,
just getting moved around by the wind, but it's not getting it's getting blown this way and that way. So her point was very much that we have to have both. We have to have both religion and spirituality and when I was talking about my experience with her around, I don't know that I said this explicitly, but I've definitely had an experience in multiple scenarios and multiple places where the the person of authority, whether it's the minister or the preacher or the imam, is holding their particular religion with such narrowness that I really feel like it's pushing people away. Um, and she gave me this beautiful reframing of that someone can someone who's teaching from a place of outer religion is can be teaching from a place of their desire for you to know God. And someone who is teaching from the place of carrying an inner spiritual experience can be teaching of from the place of be with God.
hmm hmm. No, that's a great way to understand it because, when I hear, for example, I take the one phrase, "I'm spiritual but not religious." If
Mhm.
I was to like flatten it, and I don't like flattening things, but just for this topic's sake, that's another way of saying I'm alive, but I don't have any rules that's guiding me. Almost like, the boat with no sail. I'm just alive, moving through this life, realizing what I said about Allah is ever present. And there's a way where if I was to say, and I guess I should explain for more people that don't know. So it's a way to use in some scenarios to
Mhm.
use Ar-Rahman to veil you from Ar-Rahim. And so Ar-Rahman is the universally merciful attribute of God who does not differentiate. You could be an atheist. If you exist, you're connected to it. So that's it. And so that's the overall universal mercy that everyone, you don't need a book, you just need life and you are connected. And a lot of people use that connectivity to avoid the more directed connectedness of a prophet. Because and this is more topics like alhamdulillah, days are all coming up that most people don't disbelieve in God or reality of God or the concept of God. A lot of times they disbelieve in how Islam uh, defines prophethood
Mm.
because they don't believe a person has the authority to speak on behalf of the the ultimate reality or the
Mhm.
objective reality. That
Mhm.
that's there is nobody who has that. You read the Quran where the people know why would he send a man just like us? Why not a angel or something spectacular? Where no, yes, dear, and then it's unfortunate for us and fortunate at the same time that we'll never meet a prophet now because as we believe as Muslims that the Prophet Muhammad is the final one. And so a prophet comes with authority and it's not just like giving you these options of you could do this or that. It's like, no, God is telling you this. And
Yeah.
so that's what like religion narrows, but it doesn't lose. Like I had somebody tell me, oh, what's the difference between me and the prophet? God speaks to me. And I say, that ilham, which we would say ilham is inspiration, is open to everyone. That's nothing that you have to be a certain belief system to be inspired because your existence is that connectivity.
Hmm.
But when it comes to wahi, which is only a prophetic revelation, that's authority. What is coming to your heart is not a command that everybody else has to follow. But what a prophet gives is for the people whom he's directing his call to follow, which is humanity. And so that's where there's a difference. Like Allah says in the Quran, uh, the if you were to gather all the trees and all the oceans and times them and they were like pins in the oceans like ink and times them by seven that they would extinguish before the words of Allah would extinguish. So it's not that we're limiting the limitless. It's that there's a specific words and instructions that we're given that has nothing to do with outcomes of what we're seeing now. It has
Hmm.
to do with when we pass, and no one's coming back. And I had a talk with a friend that talked about NDEs, near-death experiences, and I said, yes,
Hmm.
that's a very we wouldn't ever deny experience. It's what are you translating that to? What is your understanding of that experience? Because even things like fana and enlightenment, where people have this experience where the ego dissolves
Hmm.
and some people would stop a lot, say like, "Oh, I've become God" or something like that. That's their translation of something that they experience. And we go according to these what we tell ourselves, but there's a way where, like I told with the NDEs, that's not death. It's a different, that's near death experience. Nobody's come back from death to tell us. And this is where we have faith, but where the specifics of the word and the books of Revelation would differ from just the universality of existence and being able to connect to that love, to that mercy. That's one thing, but there's an existence that's beyond this that we are called to do certain things in order to have a connectivity that lasts beyond this experiential life that we're in together. So it's beautiful because, like you say, I don't talk to people. A lot of what I share and what like when I don't even say the word Islam because of all of the connotations that people have put on and people have been introduced to a lot of wild things that just
Yeah.
aren't true. But it's so there's a way we can communicate our belief just in the everyday human experience that you can't deny that this is what you experience, even though you wouldn't call it what we call it, but you're having this experience. And that's what, alhamdulillah, a lot of my friends share with me about they never feel that I pressure them or say that their
Mm.
belief is wrong. 'Cause that's
Right.
not, there's no need. Like, water's water.
Yeah. There was a Rumi saying about knots in a string, and I can't really remember. Like, I think it's like it doesn't matter how many knots, the string is one. Like there's this idea that we have multiple paths in our hearts and our souls and the humanity as a whole, and the and essentially we're going to the same place.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like where there is no other place to go but God when you die. Now, the
Right.
question that makes a difference that people usually don't want to differentiate is, are you arriving in the pleasure or the displeasure? And then if you get into universality, there's no way to, and that's what we're in America. Like a lot of my discourse with people when they say, "Oh, that's wrong," and I was like, "Based on what? Based
Yeah.
on what? Like, what do you?" And a lot of times the conversation stops there because I feel, well, okay, I'm not denying what you feel, and if that's what you base right and wrong off of, that's you. But
Yeah.
I don't do that, because we would all be in the chaos that we actually see going on if we live that way, because that is what's going on.
Right.
Is everything.
If we all define right and wrong as the whims of our desires and emotions,
There's
then
no
there would be
objective
even more
reality.
chaos than the chaos that we're seeing right now.
No, I think it would be exactly what we're seeing because that's what
Ex-
most people define. Because we have this crazy amount of freedom that's scary if you think about it. The things that we live, we're actually in total freedom to make a choice. Now, whether it actually comes to fruition, that's beyond us. But to make choices, like say me at work, that's all social agreements, collective agreements.
Right.
But an individual is in the total freedom if he didn't like his boss that he could punch them in the face at any given moment. And I told one person, I said, that awareness of freedom that we all have would, or I say should, I would hope, make us want to be merciful because we have no idea what's going to happen based
Right.
on our behavior.
Right.
But that's what we walk around. But we have all of these systems and concepts that we have collectively bought into and agree that kind of veils us from the level of freedom that each individual actually has. It's kind of scary, but not so much if you realize there's a reality outside of the selves that we're seeing that's actually real or really, I wouldn't say orchestrating because I don't like to use that, but is bringing into existence what we choose. And sometimes he chooses not to, and that's a mercy in itself also.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So I'm just going to translate. So what you were just saying, because I don't know that every listener is going to get that, but what you're saying is that God brings into existence in accordance with what the individual choice is. So, right? That's what you're saying.
So I would say we have the ability to choose, and even choosing is limited because you can only choose based on the choices you have. So when we make a choice, God, and because in Arabic it's kasab, we acquire our acts, but the actual action, it
Mhm.
taking place, He creates us and what we do, and we're held accountable to our intention and choice in the matter. Because sometimes we want to do something bad, but for whatever reason, it doesn't happen beyond our control. It doesn't. But we'll be held accountable to our choice and intention to want to do it, even though it didn't actually happen. That's our path.
Speaking of being held accountable, I noticed that there was that line about numbing yourself in the past,
Yes, yes, yes.
and I realized that I've been lately, just in the last, excuse me, the last few weeks, been especially processing how strongly I grew up in a household of people who had really become highly skilled at distracting themselves. And I learned some of those patterns, from a very young age. And I'm like, oh, part of my having accountability today as an adult, part of adulting is being like, oh, yeah, am I distracting myself? Am I numbing myself? Am I balancing the outer and the inner? You know,
Yeah,
what's the turning of my heart right now? Is it turned to the world, or is it turned to the ego, or is it turned to a law? And and it's something that, it's almost like I'm surprised that I feel like I should have made more progress, more progress by now than I have. Like, I'm like, wow, you really are excellent at distracting yourself.
yeah. No, but what you do, that those questions are beautiful. And what's more beautiful is that you answer them honestly. Because, you know, it's been my personal experience, sometimes now, sometimes more so in the past, that we'll validate our own foolishness. And when we do that, it
Mhm.
cuts us off. And instead of being like, nah, I really was mad and I really was about to punch that person because, and because a lot of times being present doesn't require you to do anything, just to be aware, aware of yourself and being real with yourself. Like really being aware. It's like, did you notice that? It's like, yeah, man, that was real. But we aren't honest at that level a lot of times. And the distractions nowadays, you only need a phone. That's it. That's all you need to do is a phone. It can be a screen this big and it blots out the whole existence.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Uh, that makes me think that, you have cultivate mercy as your background, and you obviously, in addition to the manofreal.net, you have cultivatemercy.com.
.com.
Um, so I mean, it's clear that this is an orientation for you. Like, and part of the process of cultivating mercy is being honest with ourselves and not going into shame, but instead being honest with ourselves with holding some mercy in, like, yeah, yeah, I can really do a good job of distracting myself. I, I'm very skilled. I'm highly skilled at that.
Yeah, and that's to get to be real, being honest with yourself in the presence of God. Like that is with
Yeah,
the awareness that God's not, you're not fooling God, like spiritual or religious performance, to drop that stuff, to just be real. And it doesn't mean giving in to whatever real say for us. We don't feel like praying a salat that comes up and just be, man, I don't feel like praying. But yeah, I don't feel like praying, and I'm gonna pick myself up and go pray. So
yeah,
like to make the
yeah,
action in accordance with what we're commanded to do, but without lying to ourselves about how we're going about it. Because I'll say, how I've been holding tasawwuf or Sufism in in hand with religious or religiosity, I'll say, is
yeah.
the story of Cain and Abel,
Mm,
where they offered a sacrifice. They both did the action, but
right.
Abel did it sincerely and from the best of what he had, and Cain just was like, did it without his heart there. And so you can have the action, you can have the fulfillment of acts, but where's your heart oriented? And that's the big question. You could be sad, you could be angry. Do you return back to the presence and awareness of the presence? Because I always remember getting into talks with politics and stuff, and I was like, yeah, what you're saying is true, and I hear how strongly, but we don't need to talk so rough and tough because we're in the presence of the all-knowing. Like and that's humbling. Like there's no need for me to prove myself right.
Right.
It really is. It drops so much performance that goes on in the day-to-day human interactions, and it really takes away a lot of talk too. There's a lot more witnessing because when you stop talking, you can see and be open to a lot more. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, through our own choice, we cut ourselves off a lot more than we connect ourselves.
Yeah. I like that you use the word performance and you're tied it not only to performing the ritual prayer, but just performance in our daily lives, performance in our conversations. And I have to remind myself, I tend to be like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And like I grew up with this sort of compulsive aspect, and I
Uh-huh.
can get this kind of like do kind of energy going. And
Yeah.
um and I have to remind myself, presence, not performance.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a good thing. That's beautiful. Is
Yeah,
doing there's a part there's two parts of there's being and there's doing. And so many people are doing without being, and then there's a other group that's being without doing. And you want to have it's again that wholeness
yeah,
and being real because we're all not complete. Like we're perfectly imperfect. We
yeah,
weren't supposed to be like angels. We were made how we're made, and that's where that level of honesty comes in, and gratitude really. Because for me, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, like he brought us everything that we need. I don't have to do anything in regards to like conveying the message to the degree that people feel sometimes that they need to perform and be out there and shouting and all of this stuff. It's like, well, there is that, and Allah is present with everyone who's alive and
mm,
directing and guiding. And so, man, if do you feel compulsed? That's another thing. When you feel that compulsion to say, "Well, you're wrong," and this, you got to check that because is that just you?
yeah,
So where's God? Like, is that just your own self? Because there is, it flows so smooth when you stop doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. And that reminds me of a saying that I'm gonna forget in the moment, but it reminds me of a saying that Imam Ghazali um, issued an opinion on, and maybe you know this, but Imam Ghazali issued an opinion on the on music. Do you know what I'm talking about? Um,
Not specific, no.
um, he said something about that. You know how some Muslims believe that music is haram,
Haram.
is
Yeah,
forbidden, right?
yeah.
Right. So Imam Ghazali said that music itself is not the issue. The issue is the consciousness of the listener.
Yes, orientation. Like us, orientation is it for me. Like that's it. Would because you can find connectivity to God through anything that one, of course, in the level of permissibility. And even when we fall into sin to regain from that forgetfulness that he is there to forgive us. He's not
Mm.
there he's not looking for a gotcha moment. We do
Right.
that to ourselves. And so it's like, as I said, he created everything that you're seeing, including the actions you undertake. So he is not unaware of what's going on. It's
Right.
just, are you turning towards and being honest?
Yeah. Yeah. So as we tie ourselves back to the beginning of our conversation, which is started with the song Living in These Lands. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about everything that we've said doesn't diminish the difficulty of living in these lands. It doesn't diminish the difficulty of use the word dunya, which is the material world. It doesn't diminish the difficulty of the life of on this earth. It doesn't diminish the difficulty in the experience of this country, the experience of ICE, the experience of racism, the experience of systematic oppression, colonization, genocide, and so on and so on and so on. And so part of what I'm hearing is that there's value in just being present, but being real, being real and being present together
Yes.
with the consciousness of the divine that creates the orientation to mercy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it right there. And
Yeah.
that's because, like you said, it doesn't take away necessarily the hardship and the pain of the experience, but there is a way, and there's no way to really share the experience that happens inside. Because while you will feel the pain, it's not constricting. It's like there's a spaciousness that happens within that doesn't allow the resentment, doesn't allow the bitterness. It doesn't make you pacifist where it is, oh, everything's just going on, as the Father or God wills and stuff like. Nah, you can take action, but don't forget who's present. Don't forget who's aware. Don't forget who's the Lord over all of these things that are going on. And question yourself, what is it costing you? If it's costing you your orientation, then you should get out of the situation and really return to where or be engaged into that which can allows you to maintain your orientation and presence. And that's what I always say is it's to our benefit to have a sheikh because
Mhm.
in my experience, when we're doing or a guide,
Mhm.
uh, when we're doing the work by ourselves and being self-driven and we're aware of a lot of the concepts, we have to be aware of our own limitations. And
Yeah.
so what we call the nafs or some of the ego, because the nafs is a bigger thing than just ego. There's a way where it can ride in the guise of spirituality. It can ride in the guise of religiosity, and
Mhm.
and obviously in the more clear aspect, it rides when it's like worldly based stuff and lust and desires and whims and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it subtly rides in all areas, and to be humble enough to realize I need help. And this is where we take the guidance of someone who, for me, is like it has a chain, is connected to the chain. And that's where a lot of, and that's again, it ties to where I was saying people don't really hold to the concept of prophethood, whereas really they don't give authority to anything outside themselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like my heart knows and is connected. And I think there's an ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran, about people who say, things like their heart is connected to or contains the word of God, that is their own heart is sufficient to guide them through everything. It's really not, because we can definitely be misguided. And even in sincerity, which I define sincerity as what we was honesty in our orientation versus some people say sincerity is like I really believe this like in depth. Is like no, that's just
Mm,
I separate those, so I make a difference between
yeah. I think it's difficult. I think much of our spirituality in today's world is pointing us in the direction of our heart and pointing us in the direction of the wisdom of our inner wisdom,
that.
um, which I completely agree with. And and the the awareness of our heart is a reflection of the state of purification of the heart and the degree to which the light of the soul is in is cast into the mind and the body and the heart. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to be honest with oneself about.
Well, I would say we need rock bottoms. If people have hit a bottom, it's not hard. Like,
Yeah.
we're blessed with abundance in this society, and so that's what makes it hard. And so, if you come from places where you've either seen poverty or you've been on the bottom of some or felt helpless, so to
Mhm,
speak,
mhm.
in certain situations, you realize there's a limitation, and you call out. I mean, that's what started me on on this path because I didn't want to deal drugs, and I already told the guy to bring it, and it was like, well, don't want to say don't bring it. And then I prayed. I prayed in the one place Islamically you really shouldn't pray that. With my head next to the toilet. I mean, it was symbolic if I look back, but I don't like doing that. But but it's just I prayed in the bathroom, like God, if you get me out of this. And the
Yeah.
guy forgot the next day, and that was outside of my control. It was nothing that, but that's again, that's where those kind of experiences where we can have our own individual journey that
Mhm.
connects to the collective journey. A lot of us stay with the individual journey and don't connect it to a collective journey as well. And it goes hand in hand. And there's everybody's walking towards completion or completion of our awareness. Because at least how we hold the day of judgment, nobody's going to be confused about what they did in this life. That's actually another recording coming up. It's kind of heavy. I don't even. It's about
Mm.
the day of judgment, but the clarity that we all will have, no matter if you're a human being, you did all of our excuses and stuff. We will see 2020 that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another part of adulting is that I've been processing lately is I've been being honest with myself about I'm being honest with myself about how much there's part of me that's still an inner child that's angry with God, you know, and being honest with myself about how much I distract myself. Um, but part of that, like adulting, is like being honest with yourself about, okay, is this choice, is it is it leading me to delusion, deception, or is it leading me to the divine, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And is this something that's like you can term it angelic nature or devilish nature, but you also can term it heaven, hell. Like, is this
Uh-huh.
is where this thought's going, and where these feelings are going, and what I'm about to do, is this going to lead me to heaven or hell? And it's like
Uh-huh.
that's I think we in our society in our culture, it's like we don't want to deal with that. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to think about hell. We don't want to be like, yeah, hell's real and my action is going to have a real consequence. Like, I think we've sort of culturally, and maybe this is just my own personal, maybe it's me that's done this, but it seems like, in my perception, that we culturally are like, yeah, no, I don't want to face that aspect of the very real consequences that my actions have for my own mental state, emotional state, state of my heart and soul, but also the real consequences those actions have in terms of hereafter, heaven, hell. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I would like to add to that, because it's not just you. That's definitely something in our culture. I used to call it the all dogs go to heaven kind of thing, where we would tell ourselves some things. And I was
Mm,
always like, "But again, where did we get this from? Like, no matter what, I know they're looking down, smiling. I was like, well, he was just fornicating in the church the other day. Like, but or what I wanted
mm,
to add to it is that when we realize the limitations of ourselves and ability to constantly be directed, that's where we realize Allah's grace and mercy. We don't get to the paradise, we don't get to anything except through his grace and mercy. And that's where the humble, like the humility comes in and is really dropping. You have that accountability, and then to really prostrate to like, even I have this and this is nothing. I just need you.
yeah.
And that's where the sweetness really is, because when we do take that depth inside and the realizations of how we acted, how we're in the present, what we thinking with the stories we tell ourselves, that God is carrying us through all of this. And sometimes when I say Islam, we say submission. We can also say is letting go.
Yeah.
And it's not a letting go of frivolity, but a letting go of self-direction. You take account for yourself, but you really try to keep yourself aware of God's presence, His mercy, His forgiveness, because that's what tips the scales. We can't fathom God's mercy and His grace. That's what tips it all. Like that's where we really would fall silent more
Yeah.
times than not, and just in
Yeah.
awe of what and is gifted to us. There's nothing that's obligated obligatory on Him to show us. He does that because that's who He is.
Mm, mm, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no story. That's just Him and His gift to us through existence. And there's nothing that we could do to repay it, and there's nothing that He asks but for us to acknowledge that reality. And then, yes, there's forms that those realities come to reflect, but and its base is acknowledgement, and then how you carry that into existence through action is another step.
So how we live in these lands
Yeah, yes,
is be present, be real, be aware always of God's grace, of God's forgiveness, of God's mercy, of God's generosity, and that ultimately that God created us and our actions. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that's so, and be aware of that. And what do you ask yourself? This is something I ask myself. When you have this awareness, what does that move you to do? Sometimes it could be nothing and just sitting, or it's not, it'll change from time to time. But for me, that's where the religion part comes in, because he commands things. And so it's like, if I can do this, and then when you're able to do it, realize he gave that to you as a gift on top, and you'll just keep melting away. It's just, but there's steps. That's why I say, like, again, the role of a prophet is so paramount for us, because it connects us to how to embody the gratitude of the servant, how to embody returning the love that you were receiving from just being in existence.
Mm. So part of that answer plus
Uh-huh.
is to cultivate our connection to the prophet or prophets of our tradition.
Mhm.
And earlier you mentioned spiritual guide, if you can, you know, identify a spiritual guide that you want to follow. And then part of what you're saying, I don't, at least my inference from it, is part of maintaining this awareness and what action, does that awareness lead you to? Um, a part of that factor, excuse me, a part that factors into that is the company that you keep.
Yeah.
And if you're following a spiritual guide and you have identified, you know, that the people in your life are also people who are sharing that commitment, um, to also be real, to also be present, to also be aware of God's forgiveness and grace and presence and generosity, um, then you're in a much better place to live in these lands than otherwise.
Yeah. Winging it. Just winging it. That's it. Definitely these things tether you and like and give you the resilience
Mm.
and wherewithal to not crumble, but to stand. I mean, and you will crumble, but you'll find that God is also going to hold you up when you crumble.
Yeah.
And then sometimes in that realization, realize he was actually holding you up the whole time. And
Yeah.
and our actions were just what we were able to see from that holding.
So our actions were just what we were able to say that again
Our actions are what we're able to see from God's holding up
from God's
of
holding.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's what God willing, that's how we're going to try and continue to live in these lands with awareness that God's holding us up. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Abdul-Karim, once again for being present, showing up, sharing your
Thank you for the
presence.
invite. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. It's a great conversation. Thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, if you would please just take a moment to ask yourself what stays with you, what sticks with from this conversation with Abdul Karim. Mm. I'm inspired by your comments about the inner spaciousness. Like you hold like your faith is so very strong. There's
Inshallah.
that term itqan, the term of certainty. Like
Uh-huh.
you hold this pole that you carry itqan that allows you to have that inner spaciousness in the face of all the things that you have experienced as part of your life and all the things that we are experiencing living in these lands. So thanks.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, please like, share, and comment on this episode. Please follow and subscribe to Beyond Names. To make an appointment with me, please visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light. May you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.